Welcome to Special Topics in Media, a podcast devoted to examining popular culture, one artifact at a time. I'm Dr. Garret Castleberry, Professor of Media Production and Communication at Mid-America Christian University, and joining me in this Mass Communication Perspectives season of the pod, Annabeth Fehrle. How are you doing?
Doing amazing. I'm so happy to be here.
For new folks jumping into this conversation, Annabeth, you've been serving as student intern this past semester.
I sure did.
And now you're spreading your wings.
I am.
The metamorphosis is underway. You have graduated with your degree
So happy.
in media and communication, and you're on the hunt for new ways to continuously improve, to explore and apply those that
skills.
craft.
New opportunities.
Building new skills all the time.
I want it all.
Including,
I literally want it all.
We're going to try to help you climb that mountain.
Yes.
You've been joining us and providing some life-giving energy to our Mass Comm Talks. We've got a new set of conversations that are built around COMM 3603 is a Mass Communication Perspectives course. If memory serves me correct, way back when, at one point it might have been mass media perspectives as well, and so we're really looking at two fields at once, not unlike our program, not unlike its title suggests. And we have one of our most converging sets of theories and key terms to talk about yet. Do you want to prime us in terms of like what the book is, where we're drawing from, title of
is this videoing? Like, can it see me?
Yeah.
Okay, I just want to show the book.
Absolutely.
Okay. So we are reading from the Communication Theory and Millennial Popular Culture book, edited by Kathleen Glenister Roberts. Okay. And then we're doing chapter 14, hashtag television advertising, the multi-step flow of millennial TV usage, commercial viewing, and social media interaction. And this chapter was actually written by Andrew Sharma and Chris. It's either Egan or Egan. I'm not quite sure which one it is.
Okay, yeah, that's fair.
Okay. We are jumping into some new verbiage we might have not used before.
Absolutely.
I guess you could say. Highlighting mostly the multi-step flow. I think it's a theory.
Yeah, multi-step flow theory. And really, it's, when we think about theories are ways of thinking about and then describing phenomenon in new ways that they maybe previously didn't have language for. So, for example, technology is always changing. Yep. It's always updating. That's one of the reasons it can be a very interesting field to study in, or to have the, we like technology is such a catchy cultural term because we strive to have the newest updates, or what's the latest app that's catching fire, or I want to have that latest phone that's going to have the who what's it's that that give me a kind of dopamine hit, aesthetic pleasure, that kind of thing, but maybe make me part of the cultural scene, that sort of thing. Of course, that ties into advertising driven culture that we live in and the way that society gets shaped by that. But multi-step flow is an updated way to think about how we encounter media. So maybe let's wind back the clock, set that up a little bit. Okay. Let's say we are 200 years ago.
Okay.
Right? I don't know. That's a
it's a stretch.
It's a while back, but if we're 200 years ago and we have, I don't know if we're westward, pioneers. We're kind of out in the new landscape of the new world here, the settlement of America. We are going to encounter some limited mass media at that time. You might, if you live in a populated area, you're going to get a newspaper. You're going to get information from that newspaper. Now, if you're somewhere even further back in time than that, let's say the colonial period of New England or the early colonies, you might get a pamphlet that gets passed around, right? These pamphlets were the way to create what we use the term propaganda now, and we tend to think of that negatively, but pamphlets were a way to take advantage of printing mass communication messages. So that is to say, it's a message from one person or entity to a large group of people, and to gain circulation. And so you had your pamphlets, and then this would evolve into newspapers as well. And certainly things like paper were in ready supply because we had all the forestry that had yet to be cut down, all those beautiful trees that maybe aren't quite so old or new or present anymore. But and that was a mass medium that worked. And then as society continued to connect to the new world, that American West, the eventual, this is why they make such dramatic focus of the Transcontinental Railroad, of the way that by connecting a railroad, by building it across the United States, it could finally bring together the two major port areas of the country in the east and west coast. And then after that, you would have like the telegraph wires that would get hung up, and then within a few decades, telephone wires and that kind of thing would come about. And then radio would be invented, and then television, and more as an entertainment medium, but it's coming out of stage performance and vaudeville. You would get these Nickelodeons, and they were precursors to what we think of as film, which used to be celluloid film, and now it's just digital photography. But those kinds of things, those were all mass mediums that developed, and it was always thought of compartmentalized. These are separate things that you kind of spend time doing distinctly. And in conversation with maybe the advent of more technologies for inside the home space, you think about getting a television in the phone, as well as radio, as well as television by mid-20th century. And then lo and behold, a few decades later, we're going to see the onset of the internet as something that people can acquire, personalized in their homes, and that's going to be a game changer.
It was the biggest mass medium change that we've experienced, I feel like, to this date. It was everyone wanted it because it offered so many new things that we hadn't experienced yet, I guess.
Well, sure. And people, we had all of these new leisure habits, like quote unquote surfing the web, right? Suddenly people didn't have to maybe go out to libraries, which there was always plenty more people than not that didn't want to go out to libraries for things, right? Sure. Those haven't always been the most centralized hubs, but there was a new way to, I guess, excite people about knowledge and information. Yeah. And that's why today they refer to the internet age, they also refer to it as the information age, because so much information is flowing and circulating, and quickly we're seeing maybe different kinds of means of production. You always think about, there's the physical means of production, factories that make things, and then those things get shipped and packaged and stored and shelved and sold and acquired. But those are signs of the industrial age. And if we're in a post-industrial age in more modern societies, we're not as wrapped up in making things as consuming and purchasing and acquiring things. And that's what makes the information age a little more resonant with the U.S. economy today, because we're learning how to trade in ideas as opposed to material things. And that is due in large part to one of the internet's great advents, the social media. And so on social media, you need different ways to, of course, you can plug your credit card into stuff, right? And you make purchases. I'm sure you've made purchases recently online. Let me pause and ask, how often would you say like your ratio of in-person purchasing if you shop for something versus online?
Okay. I don't really have time to go shopping like at the mall or grocery shopping is pretty much the only shopping that I do where I get out and really go, unless like I need something like right then, I do a lot of online shopping, especially through like Amazon or like whatever, because it's easy and it is convenient. So I mean, I would say I online shop a lot more than I in-person shop, because it's just for time purposes, really.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm sure if people do have free time to go shop, then they do, but I don't. So, but I feel like, I mean, people buy things online all the time. It's made it so easy, you know?
You highlight two important takeaways, though. Convenience and efficiency. And it's there is an argument out there that many people would agree with. People often don't take the time to pause and think about that one of the most valuable commodities in existence is time itself. And we're always short on time. We're always wanting more time to do something else. And that is why, as a society, we're so gung-ho about buying into things that are relating to coming out of technology and the information age, because if we can make those acquisitions at the click of a button, right, at the touch of a screen, this is going to solve the problem of time for us. We're going to, in our heads, we think we get time back, and thus it adds value. And so it, you know, shifts things. Well, one of the ways that we get, so if we've introduced this whole new technology set to culture, and you say to yourself, that didn't exist 40 years ago. So anytime there's a new thing, that new thing needs to be named, right? You think about almost like creation theory here, right? Any new thing needs to have a proper name. It needs to be organized in that fashion. And so when we enter the information age and this economy of digital ideas, you need new language to go with those ideas.
Absolutely.
Hence, a portion of the title of this chapter, the hashtag.
Hashtags.
The hashtags this is a relatively new phenomenon.
Yes. I think that okay, let's just break it down a little bit. Okay, a hashtag, it's basically, it brings a whole bunch of people together through one click of a button, you know? Let's say I post something, I'm like, you know, hashtag MacU, okay?
Yeah.
It's going to bring you to everything that we do here, okay? So I think that people are starting to use hashtags or links within an ad because it promotes whatever they're trying to get out there. Like if we were trying to promote MacU, we're going to put hashtag MacU, because the more clicks you get, the more interactive views you get, whatever, it's better for your brand. So I think that's why a lot of advertising companies are capitalizing on this, because they are using a multi-step flow and getting people to talk about a certain thing, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, we often, let's take it back to that idea of the printed newspaper.
Okay.
If I want to reach the kind of person that looks through the newspaper, I have to pay the newspaper to run my advertisement, and then hope that the reader isn't skimming in limited sections and they're going to run across my ad, and that's going to lead to a generation of like connections that they have to make in order to pick up on and seek to acquire my product. And what a hashtag does is it cuts through an increasing amount of, let's call it digital noise. Let's think about the communication model for a second. So all the way back to like the simple communication model. You have a sender and a receiver, and then it's sending a message along a channel, and then you don't just automatically receive, you have to, what Stuart Hall calls, decode that message. You have to decode it according to the specifications that the sender intended. So that is, you know, when we talk about author's intent or the writer's intent or the creator's intent, like, did I understand the message accurately? Did I get that message strategy correctly? This is why texting is so easy, and yet it creates complications, right? It's like, to you sent me a perfectly simple set of maybe a report of some kind, directions or a question, and you're excited when you did so, and so you put some exclamation points at the end. In fact, you're so enthusiastic, you put the letters in all caps. Well, I don't have the benefit of tone of voice, eye contact, unless we're just simpatico, and I know you inside out. That can lead to what can happen in the exchange of communication, interference or noise. I might interpret it wrong because I think now all of a sudden I'm thinking, Annabeth's yelling at me. She's so upset.
I would never do this.
You know, she can't stand that I'm not being more attentive to the nature of this message she sent. And this happens all the time in our digital communication. And so we need new ways of working through and understanding it. So all that I was going to relate that to digital noise. There's all this digital noise, meaning there's competing messages everywhere. Thousands and thousands we come into contact. So the hashtag is like a portal, right?
It's narrowing it down in a sense.
It's attempting to get us connected to the person that's going to read the sports page versus the lifestyle page in the newspaper much quicker than because the internet's a much bigger space, so we're throwing it out there hoping they can make those connections.
Well, and if you use TikTok or Instagram or whatever, you have a For You page. So if you interact with people's posts that have hashtag, let's say like you're into cooking, hashtag spaghetti, whatever you want to do, you're gonna get more things on your For You page that relate back to cooking. Because if you interact with it, if you like it, if you leave a comment, if you repost it, it's going to bring you back to more things with that hashtag, which is why I think it is beneficial, especially for advertising people or marketing people, to use it, because you're going to get more interaction leading to hopefully more business.
Have you noticed how sometimes influencers will, whether it's someone, and not even an influencer that you're watching that's like, I'm doing, this dance move, I'm a dancer for my videos, or I'm a, athlete doing this kind of maneuver, I do trick shots or whatever. But someone that just is trying to build up a page. Have you ever seen this practice where they'll hijack a topical hashtag?
For sure.
And it has nothing to do with the video itself. But they're just trying to capture.
They just want to get on your page, period. They just want to capture your attention. And that's all it takes. It's really that simple.
On one hand, we could, in terms of describing it, we could say that's like a surfer trying to catch a wave, right?
Sure.
Out there.
Yeah, sure.
And the wave would be the algorithm. And the algorithm of the wave of traffic, of users, of people that want they're out there looking for content. On the other hand, there is, when we say, like, when we use a term like they're attempting to hijack that hashtag or trend, they're really kind of infiltrate a space that isn't intended for what they're doing with that message or message strategy. And so you can kind of see these cynical sides of information exchange and how that works, and how people can maybe even be manipulated through that, right? You think about, maybe there's a big conversation. I was just listening to a podcast episode from It's a Pod I've introduced in class before, Derek Thompson's pod, where they're having a conversation about the relationship between social media and mental health, and that's important areas of research to continue, but when someone is infiltrating spaces that maybe belong to a different message strategy, that could grow in concern if, say, you're thinking about what is intended to be information that is, let's say, is geared toward children or younger users, and then all of a sudden you have message strategies that are far more mature or adult, attempting, kind of cross-converging the hashtag.
Kind of almost a whole nother conversation, to be honest with you, because there are so many things that go on social media that I don't think children should be a part of. But okay, sorry, trying to go back to just the hashtag though, I think that they promote these so much on ads, especially on TV. Like, they add the hashtag or they'll add a link because people want to have something that's interactive when they're what their on-demand viewing experiences. And I think this is because people are likely to be on their phones while watching TV. I mean, we know that. Okay, let me just break something down for you guys, like, especially, like, I'm 22, okay? And I know that a lot of people my age, Gen Z, whatever, we have to be, doing something else or watching a show at this point, because our attention span
That's actually a claim that these authors make in the chapter, right?
And that's why I was trying to connect to it. It's because our attention span is literally like a goldfish at this point, okay? We want something that's going to get our attention, and we can't. We struggle with having our attention there the whole time. You know what I mean? So I think that it is smart for these people to be putting the hashtags or the links or whatever, because we're probably on our phone as we're watching the stupid ad play. You know what I mean? So it does get people interactive. And just another example of this, like last night when I was at the Thunder game, like they had people like on the Jumbotron or whatever, and they got there and they got like free stuff because they used a hashtag and they posted it on social media.
Well, and they're driving up that. And what's really behind that? We could ask ourselves. And maybe it's just play. It's just a way to engage the audience. But then someone else could look at that and say, well, they're getting people to openly use, they're gathering some data, doing some data collection on their, on the IP addresses and things like that along the way. And now they're able to, different parties are able to, this is, when I say information economy, if we think there's not money signs and, the ones and zeros of the economy at work here too, that we'd be mistaken, because there's absolutely, an ebb and flow of currency going on. And there is that cultural currency, that thing to be, oh, I'm known, I'm an influencer, I become a kind of pseudo-celebrity through the fame of, what we call internet fame. But then there's that currency of the generation of revenue, right? That, with that popularity, I am able to then get endorsements and sponsors, and maybe even I think it's getting harder and harder, but for the elites on YouTube or TikTok, they're getting cut checks, when their users are in the millions. Although oddly enough, I've seen videos and reports from fledgling influencers that have had, multi-million-dollar views on videos and stuff. And there are ways in which the algorithms can kind of cut this way or zig or zag, and they're not quite getting as compensated as people would believe. And so it's a really weird world in terms of what's happening. I think there would be a healthy pre-key term to insert into the conversation about this chapter before we get into multi-step flow even more. And this is not a key term. One of the things I like about this book, by the way, there's a reason we've kept it around for a while, and students tend to report that I think it's very reader friendly. I think the book's typically shorter chapters, again, modeled to meet different size attention spans in terms of these ideas and having conversations about them in written form. They put their key terms in bold, so they help the reader see here's some focus points, like here's what I'm trying to emphasize in this chapter. And multi-step flow is of course one of the focused terms, as well as hashtags, but there's another term in media studies that could be worthy of conversation here. It's called second screen. And second screen is what you were describing earlier, where someone doesn't just watch linear or even asynchronous television anymore. They'll turn something on and then they have a second screen that's a part of that experience as well. So let's say it's a film. I'm watching a film at home, and then I see, Ryan Gosling shows up. And I'm like, oh, who's that guy? He's been in the other thing that I like. What was the name of that? So then I go on imdb.com and I'm like, okay, what is the name of this movie? Or maybe I'm even in a theater and a film ends and it's part of a popular franchise, right? It's this big expensive thing, and we know it's like layered and built in. There's lots of like sequels and prequels and stuff, and even though the movie has technically communicated to me that it's ending because it's gone black and the credits are running up, I say to myself, I've been reconditioned by different cultural practices to think, wait a minute, is there a mid-credits scene? Is there a post-credits, a stinger? And so what do I do now? I get that second screen out. I'm on my phone. There's a website called afterthecredits.com. And I can go there and see, like, okay, is there more happening? Or can I pick my things up and exit the facility now? And so the second screen is very much, it went from a phenomenon that could happen to, many would argue, and you can confirm or deny, that it is maybe more common than ever. Do you find that that's a everyday part of how you would be encountering mass media?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I see it all the time. I mean, my friends do it, I do it, my family does it. I mean, and I think that's just something that's been adopted because of the growth of technology. I mean, when I was younger, yeah, I would just have the TV in front of me because we didn't have iPads. We didn't even have touch screen phones. We had none of that. It was just like, oh, my show's on, I'm going to watch it. And that, got my full attention. But now I have something that keeps my attention even longer, I guess. Or not really. I don't know. But anyways, yeah, I think it is very popular now than it ever has been.
We could think of something like a reverse effect of this. And by reverse effect, I guess it would mean if you're a student, let's relate to the students here, right? The primary audience for a lecture pod. And if you're a student, you might be, let's say, your home base is the laptop, right?
Okay.
You're participating in discussion prompts for your course, or you're researching the latest topic, or you're communicating remotely with peer members of your group project, or you're writing a paper. The laptop is your central focus. Well, what do we do oftentimes if we're in our comfort zone, right, or maybe our home space? We've got the first screen is now the more modern laptop where we're doing the work, the labor output, and then the old TV on in the background becomes the second screen effect, right? It's the white noise, right? It's the thing to, maybe it gives comfort. Like sometimes there's that curious formula, and I know everyone's different because we have quote unquote different learning styles and things like that, but sometimes people will they need noise to focus, and then other times people need absolute silence to maybe focus in different ways. How does that work for you? What were your you don't have to diverge too much information.
I think that I'm a little bit of both.
Your
probably.
max study habits.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I most of the time did have music playing in the background, or probably a comfort show that I already know what was going on, so it didn't really.
This is a good point you're making.
Just because I already knew it was going to happen, so I was just it's just there in the background for me. So,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because if there's newness to the text or artifact, intrigue, it's going to vie for your attention.
Is going to go elsewhere.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So they're interested in that, but the term they bring in, multi-step flow, I believe if they simply put, quote, reading from, where's my page number? 167. In multi-step flow, media messages overflow from the mass media into interpersonal conversations with influential people and shape public opinion. So something that the authors get into in this chapter is maybe a shift we are beginning to see in commercial advertising. And I think this was the first time I sat down. I've read this chapter several times over the years. This is the first time I read it, and I started to think, okay, they're describing a phenomenon that is starting to reverse itself. That what was television viewing and traditional commercial advertising was still somewhat the majority of the time that happening in a traditional way about the time the first edition of this book was written. And now we've really let go. And I think overall we're seeing a far more integrated society, right? They kind of use a case study toward the end about the GoDaddy ads and how they were...
No, I was just going to talk to that.
Yeah. Messing with form. And it's a very... the way I read and interpreted this time, it felt a little primitive compared to the way we see these multi-layered campaigns happen today.
I just think that there is so many positives and negatives that social media or even a hashtag can do to someone's company, because I'm going to read the example from the GoDaddies because we had Budweiser's super famous Super Bowl commercial with the lost puppy or the lost dog, and that got super popular. It was super famous, very positive feedback. We did. There was very positive feedback from that commercial. But then you have GoDaddy, who tried to do an ad kind of as satire for their company, and actually got a lot of negative feedback because that ended up I guess in this commercial there was a golden retriever puppy and it fell out of a truck, and I guess the owner sold the dog, so But apparently, like, it got, like, really negative feedback in, like, the animal rescue community.
Okay.
Because
like the PETA folks and all of
yeah,
that.
and they said, like, dogs shouldn't be purchased online because of puppy mills, blah, blah, blah. But I'm just saying, like,
they took it too literally.
They did. And there's just, like, a fine line of what marketing companies can do that may change, like, the company's legacy, you know, if that makes sense, because Budweiser will go down in history for having probably the most famous, or one of the most famous Super Bowl ads, and then you have GoDaddy, who didn't even make it to, I don't even think it aired, is what it says in the book here. It says it got pulled before it even aired.
I could remember vaguely GoDaddy.com kind of pushing the envelope. They're trying to be the, you might be too young to remember these, but Carl's Jr. had a little bit more lascivious ad campaign over the years. That was, they were being over the top, but it didn't always register as that so much as a little bit seedy in this combination of the juicy, sloppy, drippy superstar burger, and then it getting presented with, there was one campaign that was Paris Hilton, and then I think a Kim Kardashian, I could be mistaken, but it was very much, it was kind of drawing from car culture and this idea of, like, the car culture models that would be, a little more scantily clad, and it was lowbrow. It was a lowbrow ad campaign, and it kind of situates, like, it's clearly Carl's Jr. saying, on a subconscious level, they're saying, we're not McDonald's. McDonald's is very straight-laced, and we're kind of cutting at maybe a different demographic. Like, we're recognizing our slice of pie is smaller, but we're going to try to double down on getting them into our stores. And a GoDaddy campaign was a lot like that. Like, they're trying to be edgy, and there's an irreverence there that's aggressive, whereas Budweiser, we talked about how it was very mythological. The architecture of their ads, and when you think about that, it's a very conservative way of storytelling, right? It's very baseline. And even conservative politically. Remember how we broke the ad down and talked about all the flags that were present and the intentional use of reds and blues and whites in the color scheme of the ad? That's a conservative ad.
And I'm not saying that, like, companies shouldn't be edgy, because I think that we should see more of it, just because. But at the same time, I feel like people have to be constructed in their creativeness because of the society that we live in right now. People are just really sensitive, and, it sucks because we don't really get to see everyone's creativeness that we could be seeing because of backlash and because of social media. Word gets around so quick. If one group doesn't like it, it's gonna go either viral for being good or viral for being bad.
Well, and maybe it speaks to an important takeaway in the world of advertising. We blend and blur that conversation as well, which is knowing your stakeholders, right, and kind of understanding the risk versus reward, right, that you're willing to take to draw in that consumer, or get your message strategy to the right public.
And it's just like looking at that multi-step flow. Who is your target audience going to be? You know what I mean? Like, and that is the most important thing for any advertising company. Who are you going to get the most money out of? You know what I mean? Who are you highlighting as your audience? Who do you want this, commercial or this ad to reach? So
I think something you're exploring here, it includes a couple of the other terms. They're very secondary to this essay, but important to this conversation we're having, and that's this concept of digital natives versus digital immigrants. So you've identified already as Gen Z, and I kind of fit into the micro generation known as like a Zennial, right? So like the end of Gen X, the beginning of millennials here, but so that micro generation was kind of born in a digital immigrant world, but then grew up in the digital native kind of space where where computers and technology were more commonplace everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And by the time we got to, that's why it's called microgeneration, millennials, late millennials, were absolutely what we call digital natives, meaning they're born into it, they're naturalized into a world where that technology already exists and it's ever present. And so we're able to kind of recognize that. So to your point, I think you're probably going to find that digital natives are a lot more comfortable with certain kinds of message strategies, right?
Sure.
They're going to be a little more open to the wider spectrum of creative campaigns and that sort of thing. And one could make an argument. It's a little too wide an argument to probably in any way substantiate, but one could make an argument that's very that has resonance and it connects to the popularity of TikTok because it is such a wide open zone of communication strategies, right? That the themes can literally shift in hundreds and thousands of directions in terms of what those content creators are putting out there as a message strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Yeah,
very good. Well, what are there any other elements in this essay that you want to draw out and kind of talk about?
I mean, honestly, this is just like an open-ended question.
Sure.
I guess for the audience, for you, and then I was just gonna kind of speak my piece on the topic, but do you think that traditional advertisements are becoming obsolete in the age of social media and influencer culture?
So we have someone always asks something similar to that in this class and some of the other ones where we have students generate readings questions.
Yeah.
I think and so in the
and
context,
I've probably asked something like this before, but now looking at a deeper root of it, I guess, want to bring it up again. I think it's always open for
it's good
new comments.
When you think about mile markers when you're driving down the road and mile marker 142, 141, 140 and so on, how close am I getting to the state line? There's continuity there and they serve a purpose. That kind of question is almost like a mile marker down the road, it's appropriate time to ask this again.
I know,
it's
because
what
it's
is
just
the state
there's
of
so
things?
many, it just keeps getting developed.
Here's what I've seen happen. So in traditional segmented linear television, you would have these commercial breaks during your favorite programs, whether it was Friends or Dateline or Cheers or whatever the show, for decades and decades. 60 minutes, and you have these commercial breaks just like radio, and they're segmented, they're blocked, and the average commercial is 30 seconds. Now you get into cable, you get into specialty programming like the Super Bowl, you're going to start hitting more 1-minute ads. It's going to vary, it's going to deviate. But what the internet did change, what social media, the onset of YouTube changed was it was always a 30 or a 1 minute in the world before YouTube. And I was, there live when we began seeing the 15-second commercial spot, and it became more and more and more prevalent. And they continue to tinker with what that looks like. So now on YouTube, I was listening to something quite pedestrian the other day, and I was streaming it off of YouTube, and I had to be nearby, at least my finger did, it kept cutting into commercial breaks. And this is supposed to be that 21st century, game-changing model of media consumption. And I was constantly having to hit it will auto start an ad. And even though YouTube was the pioneer innovator of the 15-second ad, they now have really ads that could be 22 minutes long. In other words, this is what we used to call an infomercial on late night TV.
Oh my gosh, I miss infomercials.
They're flooded with infomercials now for every kind of thing that they could pull an audience consumer into. And you have to know to go over and hit the little skip button, which is getting harder and harder to see and find on the page there. And so I think that skip button is eligible within 5 seconds sometimes.
Something like that. Oh my gosh, wait, I have to tell you about a life hack. If you are watching a YouTube video and you can't skip the ad, the skip ad button is not there. You can just click there's like a button at the bottom and it's like, don't show me this ad again.
Uh-oh. Yeah. Oh, okay.
And you don't even have to watch
yeah.
the ad, guys. Okay, so just a like hack. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. But
no, we need to solve these problems. We need more time.
We do. We need more time. Yeah. Yes. But I was gonna say I miss the infomercial ads. I was easily influenced as a child to go like get something from the store. I'm like, Mom, I saw this on TV. Like it really works, you know. But now as like an adult, or like I guess a young adult, you know, I am influenced more than no other on TikTok.
Sure.
Because I'm like, especially like in the beauty world or in the makeup world or something, and someone tries a new product and I'm like, wow, like that really worked for them. I want to try it myself and see if it works. Or like I see someone with a cute bag. I'm like, wow, that looks great. I think I want to go try it too, you know, or go buy it. But I don't know. I think it has developed from so many new things, from just like what advertisement used to be to what it is now. I prefer, because people get paid to do this on social media, I prefer to just watch someone do it, you know, someone review a product.
It's like these tutorials where it's, here's how I look the way I look, and this is that natural look. It's only 20 steps of
and I'm here for it. Like
your bases and.
But I don't know. That started like a while ago when they started doing this, you know, and I picked up on it. Like I love watching it.
Sure.
So.
Well, this is the things that's become the more engaging content to a larger. It's edging out the thing like Friends or Big Bang Theory or whatever like traditional kind of sitcoms and stuff like that. It has less and less space, and people are they're speaking out with their consumer habits, right? With their time invested in it. But the multi-step flow also is, let's say you're watching, you got sent a YouTube video from your professor in class and you're watching it on your laptop and you're thinking, I'm also typing my paragraph about it below. And then it skips to maybe tutorial on your in a commercial break, and then but it's actually engaging enough because it's got you in its crosshairs in terms of the algorithm targeted marketing strategy. And so now you're like, not only do I want that, and air quotes need that makeup product, it's now available on Amazon. Oh my gosh. And it's Prime Day weekend of the month. And now you're probably, maybe you switch over to your cell phone now, and you're ordering on your phone.
Double screening again.
Yeah. So you've got this multi-step flow happening, right? Like this is what that might look like for you. Yeah.
And I also just think that it's just easier online because there's also like a relatedness feeling, I guess you could get, just being like seeing a girl like, for example, like the same age as me promoting a product. I'm like, wow, like I want to try that too, you know? Anyways, that's kind of all I got. So
excellent. Well,
but yeah, I think that was a good breakdown of like current multi-flow processes that we see. But yeah. So I got
a great cross-generational dialogue about the multi-flow process. Absolutely. So thank you, Annabeth, for coming in, joining us for another conversation in our mass communication perspectives series here on Special Topics in Media.
Bye, guys. Bye.